because, you know, I've heard the idea from Ukrainian journalists and analysts. You probably know him for sure, Vitaly Portnikov. And recently he said that there will be never a meeting between Zelensky and Putin because Putin does not view and does not see Zelensky as an equal person.
Yes, you asked me about it, and I forgot to answer the core of your question.
Yes.
I'm very sorry. I think it's hardly possible. It's not very probable because Putin doesn't want to meet Zelensky. Putin is still hopeful he would be deprived of such necessity, that maybe in coming months or even weeks, Zelensky would step down, in Putin's opinion. And he would meet next Ukrainian leader. This is Putin's idea, at least now. I don't know if Trump would be convincing enough to make Putin agree to meet Zelensky, but at least now, on the 8th of August, I'm 99% sure that Putin doesn't want such meeting. This meeting was not even discussed at Putin's conversation with Trump's envoy Stephen Witkoff in Kremlin 3 days ago. And Kremlin emphasized that they didn't even touch this topic. And that's why I think Putin is waiting for a new Ukrainian leader to talk with.
But you know what interesting?
Even if it takes several months.
You know what's interesting in that? Is for Putin, such American president who sees Zelensky and Putin as equal leaders. I mean, maybe for Putin, it's not the vision of American president he wants to see, you know, like, because Trump definitely do not understand that for Putin, a dictator, a leader of a nuclear country, Zelensky is basically not an equal person to meet. Maybe American president, but definitely not Ukrainian one.
You know, as we know, Trump likes dictators because he considers them as the leaders with whom he could communicate very easily and get real guarantees from their parts. Contrary to the democratic leaders, whose power is based on a very complicated system of democratic institutions, and you agree with the democratically elected leader today, but the power changes in a couple of years, and you should replan and reschedule all your agreements. With dictator, you could come to some agreement for many years ahead, and this agreement would be guaranteed by the life and health of this dictator. So, contrary to many of his predecessors, Trump is not very anxious about the nature and source of legitimacy of power he's dealing with. That's why Putin pins his hopes that such approach of Trump would be lucrative for Kremlin's master. At the same time, Putin, as we are talking about his psychology and the peculiarities of his perception of this political reality, is hopeful that Trump is really very, very interested in those natural resources, of Arctic resources, as we mentioned, and in such way he could compromise on a number of Ukrainian questions and the questions of big war in Europe more deeply and more sophisticatedly than his predecessors as well. And finally, Trump would not protect Zelensky to that most, because for Trump, Zelensky symbolizes something that he does not like. It symbolizes the Biden era, because Zelensky was very firmly supported by elites of that period of American history. He embodies European Union and European leaders, which dissatisfied and disappointed Trump by wanting him to get the White House again in 2024. And the idea of revenge to all those who were against his coming to power and getting back to power is very important for this term of Trump's presidency, inevitably. And Zelensky is, to a certain extent, associated with that. So Trump could, under several conditions, sacrifice Zelensky, and Putin is very hopeful about it. But the question cannot be resolved without European partners first, and without, of course, Ukraine and Ukrainian people, because there is no procedure but the democratic ones to replace Ukrainian president. And presidential elections cannot take place under the conditions of martial law. First, at least we should expect some steadfast ceasefire before and the elections in several months after. But nonetheless, Putin is prepared to wait because his key resource he disposes, key resource, in his opinion, has more than any other leader in the world is time. He's not in a hurry. Everybody is in a hurry, including Trump, who now is forced to think about the Congress elections in 2026. Putin is not forced to think about any elections. He has no elections, no real constituents. He thinks he could stay in power at least by 2036 if health allows him. So, and that's why he can wait. And he can outlive any of the leaders, including Zelensky.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very interesting thought. But you know, at least we see some changes in Trump's behavior from the last 6 months. At the beginning, what he was saying, to end the war in 24 hours, and he wanted to end this war by any price, by any cost. If Ukraine will obey and will lose, he didn't care. But what we see right now, it's a kind of a different approach. At least he's saying he's unsatisfied. He's always, saying, I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed. At least it's something that, as you said, probably he doesn't like Zelensky because he represents Biden era. But at the same time, something is changing in Trump's approach towards not only Zelensky, but Putin as well.
Yes, Trump is to a certain extent disappointed with Putin as well. The nature of the disappointment is quite different from Trump's relationship to Zelensky, but nonetheless, of course, Trump was almost sure he would put stop to this war by May. The first potential date of armistice, of the ceasefire, was the 20th of April.
Yes.
As a common East for Orthodox Catholics and Protestants. And but it did not happen. It was the first source of Trump's disappointment, because Putin proved to be much more deep in Ukrainian problematics than Trump expected. Trump expected that his promises to lift the sanctions imposed in Russia, to normalize the Kremlin dictator and bring him back to negotiations table on a number of delicate questions, including global security issues, even U.S. readiness to recognize officially RF jurisdiction over Crimea. All this would be so attractive for Putin, and objectively it was very attractive, that Putin would come to the idea of the ceasefire by the Easter. But Putin did not. Putin emphasized that he still wants first to get the annexion of 5 Ukrainian regions legalized and legitimized through Ukraine itself, so that those territorial gains by Russian Federation would never be doubted in any future, and so as to avoid any war for those regions in any future again. And secondly, that he would be 100% stubborn in his idea to topple the Ukrainian power. Here we still should remember again the personal hatred of Putin's to Zelensky's, because Zelensky, of course, has spoiled the initial Putin scenario of taking Kyiv over in 3 days and Ukraine in 2 weeks, because Zelensky did not flee in late February 2022, contrary to Putin's expectations, and, by the way, contrary to the expectations of many leaders, including Western allies of Ukraine, because the United States, as we remember, and personally then Vice President Kamala Harris, offered Zelensky the way how to flee and how to abandon Ukraine and to create a senseless Ukrainian government in exile. Zelensky didn't do it, in such way disappointed Putin's first. Then he has become some kind of icon for European political circles in 2022, some analog on modern Winston Churchill, and that irritated and annoyed Vladimir Putin for the second time very, very much.